What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another ep of Office Hour Tangents, O Tangents, OT for short, where I come straight from class, come straight into the podcast booth, and kind of talk about some of the tangents that we went off in class, some of the extra conversations, some of the side thoughts that we went off in class that may deserve a little bit of extra attention. So this marks the start of a new class. All right. Again, we're on this block schedule, so all our classes are every 4 weeks. So Monday marked the first day of a new class of the last block. And for most of the previous O tangents, I was teaching interaction design classes. So some of the content, a lot of the content was based on interaction, websites, all that good stuff. But now I'm teaching a class that is entrenched in design thinking. So in this class, I am, for lack of a better way to put it, I am kind of trying to teach the students how to think better, right? Giving them some techniques to help them think through how to solve a problem. And it's an important class. I think it's actually a junior/senior level class, but I actually think this type of class should be one of the first classes they take because just from my experience, I found that students at this level, they know how to do a lot of stuff, right? They know Photoshop, they know Illustrator, they know InDesign, they know After Effects, they know all these software programs, they know all these techniques, they know how to take instruction, they know how to exactly do what you ask them to do, they know how to meet deadlines, they kind of know all these skills. But one thing I feel like they're lacking is how to solve problems, right? Because a lot of how class, especially in design field and creative fields, are presented is here's an example, do something exactly like this, okay? So, or I'm gonna demonstrate how to do this, and you kind of mimic what I do, and then tomorrow hand in something exactly like that. It's like we take the problem off, like we present them with what the solution may have been after somebody else solved the problem. So we need a flyer design, we need a poster, we need a business card, we need a wrapper card, we need a motion graphic, we need an animation, we need a website, we need an app design. But we rarely go through, and I would say just in, from my classes, I'll just speak about my experiences, present them from the problem. So when they become a professional, a lot of times, especially if they're freelancing or consulting, they'll be presented with the problem that needs to be solved first. And they need to know how to work through that problem. So it's not necessarily, hey, do this, I need business cards. Sometimes it's like, hey, do you really need business cards? What problem are you trying to solve? Like, why do you need business cards? Like, you're trying to get more clients? Are you trying to get more leads? Why do you need an app? A lot of people come to me and the first thing they ask for is an app. They're like, hey, you do apps? I'm like, yeah, kind of. They're like, I need an app. And then 9 times out of 10, I'm going to tell you, 9 times out of 10, the client doesn't need an app. They need something. And sometimes they don't even need anything. They can just do what they want to do or they need to do just using social networks, for instance. But a lot of times they just, apps are like the hot thing. Apps are what websites used to be. I need a website. So I'm like, do you really need an app? What problem are you trying to solve? Well, I'm trying to increase my sales, or I'm trying to get more, trying to get people to notice my product more, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, let's work through solving that problem, and it may not be an app, right? So that's kind of where that class takes off on. And I take them through the design process and what it is, but fully knowing that not everything always works perfect. So not like just giving them steps to take in the design process so they know the precise, perfect way to pull off the design thinking process. But they have the ability and the skills and the experience to take a problem and actually work through how to solve it, how to best solve it. Now, in one class, it's hard to pull that off, but I'm trying to just give them the tools so when presented, they'll be able to kind of freestyle on their own, right? So it was dope. So on Monday marked the first day of this class, and usually for a class like this, I using the design thinking process, the first thing you do is have some kind of warm up exercise, or, some may call it an icebreaker, but it's really just some kind of exercise that's light in nature with the attempt to try to get the people in the room to come into solving this problem with as open a mind as possible. We call it a beginner's mind, or some people might call it a child's mind, right? Just something. So usually, one of the exercises I use, I take a pencil and I set it on the desk, and I just ask them what that is. But ask them what that is from the perspective of an alien who just visited Earth for the first time and doesn't know what anything is. So what would they assume a pencil is that they don't know what a pencil is and what a pencil does? And they've never seen anything, right? It's kind of like it's challenging, right? So usually I do something like that. But on Monday was dope because Monday was the solar eclipse. And instead of doing that, well, I did that also. But before I did that, as soon as I went into class and before I even introduced myself, really, I was just like, hey, how many in here have seen the eclipse before? And like nobody had. So I was like, I have some glasses. Y'all want to go out and see it? And they're like, yeah. So I took them out and they took turns looking up and seeing. And basically, I'm in South Florida. So that's basically what we saw. We didn't see totality, I think they call it. We saw basically what like a crescent moon would look like, but the sun basically looked like a crescent moon. But it was still dope nonetheless. And it was a great way to start a design thinking kind of exercise and trying to getting the students to open their mind. This was a dope way to kind of get them to come into class with as open in mind as possible. So I thought that was pretty dope. And also what I kind of went into was don't look up thinking, try not, and it's very hard. It's very hard to think about it's very hard to try to simulate yourself not knowing what you do know. I hope I said that correct. I don't know, but we'll see. So they know that's the moon passing in front of the sun. But I was like trying to look at it not from that perspective. Think of it like thousands and thousands of years ago when the first humans were hunting and gathering and they looked up and saw that for the first time ever. Anyone in their village or whatever, they saw it and they're like, what the hell is that? And what did they think? What would they have think? What would they have thought that it was? And then what kind of stories would they have passed down from generation to generation of what that was? And then you can start imagining kind of like the thoughts we have about it now kind of started from then. Because they looked at it from a beginner's mind, because it was truly a beginner's mind. Now we have science, we have religion, we have all this other stuff to kind of go into it, and we look at it different. But some people still go out and look at it from different perspectives. Okay, so I thought that was a dope way to start that class. But, another thing that I went into so this is also a continuation of a previous podcast. And those of you that have watched all the podcasts, that's what's up. Thank you. Like I said, I haven't really pumped this up. I don't really know how to pump this up or market it like I should, but it's just me right now for everything. But one of my previous podcasts, I was talking about who was going to be the next face of the NBA. And I had a list of people, Ant-Man was on there, and John Morant, Zion, and all this stuff, and Luka. And they all had logos, but I took it from a perspective of their personalized logos. And I kind of judged from that. I kind of brought it back to design, right? But Victor Wembanyama, Nike just released his, I don't know if it's a concept or it's actually a commercial. It's like an official release. So they just released his Nike logo. I would call it a Nike logo because I don't think it's a total Victor Wembanyama logo. It's the logo created by Nike, clearly. And I wanted to talk about it real quick. And how it compares to the logos that we looked at in that podcast where I featured, who's going to be the next face of the NBA. A lot of people think that Victor Wembanyama is going to be the next face of the NBA. And I talked about it in that previous podcast, but I don't know. But let's look at this logo and see what we can gather from what Nike was thinking about when they created this logo for him. I don't know how much involvement he had in it or his team, but I'm just assuming that the Nike brass came up with this logo and he just probably had to approve it. Okay, and that's just my assumption because there's Nike logos in his logo, and I'm gonna start there. I don't think it's a good look. Now, I hope this is just for this crop circle look, and I hope that the actual mark that's on shoes and apparel and merch and all that stuff doesn't have these two kind of Nike logos. So clearly it's they're trying to, they're conveying that he is different by conveying that he is an alien and that it's a basketball. And I don't know. I think this logo is, I don't want to say I'm not a fan. It is simple. I think it rocks out in its simplicity, right? It's you can't not understand it. Some of these logos we're seeing, they're like hard to understand and they have letters and you have to kind of decipher it almost like it's graffiti. This one's easy to understand. It's an alien juxtaposed in a basketball. And it's like, okay, cool. Victor Wembanyama 7'5". He kind of looks like an alien and he plays basketball. We got it. I would have loved to see them go a little deeper. I just would have liked, just with the what's the word I'm looking for? With the mythos, of Victor Wembanyama. It's like we've literally never seen anyone like him ever in basketball. Now, I'm not old enough to know about Wilt Chamberlain and all that stuff, but he wasn't 7'5". And he didn't play point guard for the most part, and he didn't shoot threes. And so I would contend to say that Victor, we haven't seen anybody like Victor. We've seen semblances of him. Bol is in the league right now, and I think he's 7'5" or close to it, and he can handle the rock and he can shoot threes. I think back in the day, his father, there's clips of him being able to shoot threes, but he wasn't bringing the ball up the court. So I get it. He's unique. He's an alien. But I feel like we already seen an alien in sports, and I don't know who. I forgot who Bernard Hopkins, he's a boxer. They called him an alien. He would walk out to the ring with like an alien mask on. He called himself an alien because he was just getting old, and he was still rocking like at a high level at a advanced age. And I feel like there's been some other kind of aliens or what they try to call an alien in sports. But I don't know. I kind of look at this logo like I looked at the first Kobe logo, the first Kobe Adidas logo that I alluded to in the other podcast, where it was just like a silhouette of the side of his head. And I just think it was limiting. It was very recognizable, but I just thought it was limiting. Like, I think this logo is limiting for Victor because it's limited to basketball. It's a basketball. Like, his logo is a basketball, pretty much. So if he wanted to use this logo in other areas, he could, but I don't know if it'd be as effective if it was just a kind of a more abstract logo that could mean anything. This logo right here means one thing. It means he's an alien and he plays basketball. That's it. And these Nike signs inside of it, it's like logos inside a logo. Like, what is that? Like, what is logos inside of a logo? That is, dare I say, whack to me. So hopefully these two Nike logos don't find themselves in official merch. But, if I was so in that episode, I kind of ranked them. You have to go back to that episode to see I could pull it up, but I don't have it queued. Yeah, he wouldn't be the new face of the NBA. If you look back at that episode, he wouldn't be the new face based on this mark. You got to be versatile, and this logo doesn't scream versatility. All right, so I did want to. That's a continuation, like a follow up to a previous episode. But there was a couple other tangents that I've went on in the last, I would say, couple of classes, couple of weeks, and another one. So in today's class, to get back to today's class, I had them we're solving a specific problem. I'm not going to talk about the problem in here, but it has to do with streaming services and kind of organization of them and who uses what and how. And streaming, and dealing with students, these 20, 21-year-olds, I'm including shows, movies, games, books. You just kind of start talking to students and you start learning stuff. That's why I love teaching, right? I learn something new every day. So one thing that I found out, or not found out, it's a small sample size, but these students that I have right now, I was like, hey, what's the new hotness? And one of the students was, hey, y'all just I saw this song that AI generated that was kind of cool. And he played it on his phone. And everybody's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Then I asked him the question, are y'all cool with this? Are y'all cool with like AI generated music? I was kind of left it as that. And they were kind of looking at me like, yeah, I think it's cool. Like, it's kind of got a good beat. And it kind of like, yeah, I might listen to it some more. Then there was like comments like that. And I'm looking out and it was just like, you could tell the generation gap, right? So it was interesting. They were like, I won't say they were totally cool, but they were cool. They didn't mind that was a AI generated music. But when we kept talking about it, then they were like, yeah. Because it was like the generation gap was, if in that class, I'm representing an older generation and they're representing pretty much the generations that's going to hopefully lead us into prosperity, right? 20, the golden demographic, 18 to 25. They didn't mind it. But I told them why I minded it. And a lot from our generation. And I had to explain, almost going back to another of my podcasts, the one entitled Amazing versus Dope, where I get into, I kind of asked them like, okay, y'all don't mind this song. They're like, nah. I was like, y'all don't mind the fact that nobody wrote this down? Like no human being like wrote it down or played the instruments or made the beat or thought of the concept. And then when they start thinking like, well, yeah, that makes sense. It kind of like you loses its luster, but they weren't really on that. They were like, well, it sounds good, so whatever. And I thought that was telling. In order to look to the future, we have to look at the past, and we definitely have to look at the present. I think some of us old heads don't look back enough. We just kind of look now into the future, and we think we're doing something by looking towards the future. But we don't look back because we don't think they know anything. Honestly, that's a lot of times what happens. But you used to be 20. Like, I'm just assuming I'm talking to somebody that's, in their 30s and 40s. But, like, you used to be 20. You used to be in college. Like, think about when that was. Like, empathize with that. Remember that? Remember that? Remember when everything was kind of new and you didn't have time to worry about everything? You just were worried about getting out of class and going home so you could play video games? Like, it wasn't that big of a deal. Seems like as we get older, things just become just a big deal. When it's like, when you look at it, and especially when you look back on it, because we don't like to look back. When we look back on it, it was like, that wasn't even a big deal. But anyway, so it's interesting. They didn't mind it. It's not a big deal to them. They don't see people losing jobs. They don't see there's no need for a band in the future, or they don't see that, where would you get like some Jimi Hendrix song, something we reminiscing about with some AI? They're like, well, if it spits out something dope, then I'm going to listen to it. So I thought that was telling. And I did want to it was a generational thing. So at this point, like I said before, when I first started teaching professionally, I was 29, or I think something like around there. And at that time, I felt like me and the students were of the same generation. I was like almost their cousin or their uncle. Like, but now I'm at the age where I'm at the age of their parents. So it's a gap. It's a true gap. And I'm not meeting the students on the same plane anymore for the most part. Like, there is a generation gap that I notice a lot now. And responses like that really, really put it in perspective. And I thought that was interesting. Another tangent we went on today had to do with them being cool about the algorithm. So I was asking them like, how do you find out new things to stream, new movies, new games, new books, all that good stuff. And a lot of them was just like, yeah, recommendations. Like, like my device recommends me stuff, and I'll be like, check it out. Or I finish a movie, and it's like, hey, another movie you may like, and they check out those things, and they really are cool with the algorithm. That's another generational gap thing. Like sometimes I catch myself like, yo, the algorithm is just taking me on a wormhole, and how did I get here? And it makes me uncomfortable. It feels like I don't have free will. But these students, from their responses, they don't even look at it like that. They're just like, yeah, it works. Like, it's giving me recommendations based on what I've watched before. Yeah, I kind of use the algorithm to discover new things, and they're totally cool with that. So, for instance, I have another platform that I have that I'm gonna get back to called Playlist Party. And in Playlist Party, in a nutshell, the premise is, and you can find Playlist Party on my YouTube channel. And well, you can see a short that I put together on my YouTube channel, but you can find the Playlist Party on playlistparty.online. Playlistparty.online. It's dope. Check it out. But the premise was that I'm sitting in my office one day and I'm thinking about what's new. It's Friday night. I'm just trying to find new music, and I'm like, nothing's real dope. And I'm like, I know my boy Tony has some dope music that he's heard lately that I don't know about. But I know back in the day when we would see each other on the weekends or something like that, I would get in his whip or he'd get in my whip, and he would throw in a tape or a CD, and he'd be like, check this out. And I would discover music because he vouched for it. So then if it was dope, I would go to the record store and buy it. That's how I found out Wu-Tang, right? My boy Justin, I've told this story on different platforms, but it's worth repeating. My boy Justin, shout out to my boy Justin Johnson. He put me on the Wu-Tang in high school. I remember that. And he had a tape. It was like a dub tape. And he was like, he got in my car and he's like, check this out. And he put it in. And it was just like, just think of that Wu sound. You know what I'm saying? It was rocking out. But at first I was like, this is so different. It was juxtaposed with like the Puffy era and West Coast Chronic era. And it was just like, I don't know if I like this. But then he started talking about why it was dope. And he convinced me that it was dope. And then after I started hearing it different based on the points he was making, the journey he was taking me through as to why these dudes are dope. Like, there's this many members, they're out of New York, but they're all dope MCs. We never seen anything like it. Listen to how gritty, like that was my thing. It was like the sound wasn't crisp, and I was used to crisp sounds at that time. And he was explaining why it wasn't crisp. And then I became a fan, and I went and bought it, and the rest was history. But I feel like today we don't get that. We just kind of rely on Apple Music or Spotify to tell us what's going on, right? And I made Playlist Party online to kind of go against the algorithm. It's like the anti-algorithm, right? So I think it's that generational gap. Like, I think they still are concerned about those kind of things, but it's almost like you have to pull it out of them. It's not like just at the forefront like it was for me. So I thought that was an interesting tangent that we went on. And another thing that kind of came out of that was I got it written down. They're also, I've known this for a couple years, but for more than a couple years, that these kids are indifferent about TVs. Now, you might have thought that, or I don't know if anybody's ever talked about it, but these kids don't need TVs. So when I asked them the question, like, hey, where do you watch your shows? Where do you watch your movies? Like, what platform? Like, and they're like, my PC or my iPad. But it was mostly PCs. It was kind of like 80% of the students were like, I watch movies on my PC. I watch my shows on my PC. I play my games on my PC through Steam. I do my homework on my PC. And then they kind of refer to a TV, even if they had one. They kind of refer it to, if I feel like sitting back and watching something, it's almost like a rare occasion, I'll put something on the TV. But it's usually like AirPlay through the computer or something like that, right? So I found that very interesting, just from a societal standpoint, from also I create things. So knowing that, so for instance, I look at Best Buy. Best Buy was in trouble. It kind of is not in trouble now. It seems like it's booming again. But, Best Buy pushes TVs. Like, seems like a third of their stores are TVs. And I feel like my generation is the last generation that's going to want TVs in every room of their house. And big TVs. Like my generation, I talk to my boys, it's all about the biggest TV with the 4K, 8K. It's going to have 3D. It's going to, 3D was always stupid. But is it going to be curved? All this stuff. Is this going to display Grand Theft Auto with Ray cannot do blah, blah, blah. And it's all about the TV. Because our generation, my generation, we remember black and white TVs. We remember square TVs. I remember going over people's houses, and if they had a color TV, it was like they was rich. I remember that. I was little, but I remember we didn't have a color TV. And I remember people that had color TVs were rich to me. People that had VCRs were rich to me. And then it got to the point where I could buy my own stuff. I remember when a 27-inch TV was huge. If somebody had 32-inch, it was huge. Right? If somebody had a projector, they was rich. So these kids, if they're 20 years old, they've grown up with HD TVs on the wall. And it's nothing to them. They rather, and I think it's this is my conjecture, I think it's and I asked them this, and I kind of they was doing most of the talking, but I was kind of controlling the proceedings. I think it's a ergonomics thing. I think it's I don't know what else to call it, but it's how they use it. The kids that I encounter, they prefer to have to watch things here, this distance, right? They just prefer it because they grew up with these, and they prefer to look at things from this distance. I don't know what to call that, or I don't even know if I'm verbalizing it clear enough, but they prefer a close viewing angle or whatever, proximity. Then my generation likes to sit back on the couch and chill with a drink, and the TV's over there on the wall or sitting on something, and we have the controller in the hand. Like, that's my generation. We're sitting there with the remote, right? And I'm the ruler of I'm a man, so I'm the ruler of the remote, and I just gotta have it in my hands, and it just has to be ready to push, and I kind of know where all the buttons are without even looking, because it's just, it's like the king on my throne, right? And I'm watching something, and I'm chilling and watching it, because that's how we grew up. But this generation, from what I've observed and what I've been asking them, they sit at their desk, the same place they do their work. They have their entertainment, and they have these supercomputers, and they have these multiple screens. One of the students had a wraparound screen he was talking about, and he's like, sometimes I'll have my show on one screen, I have my homework on another, or I'm streaming, or I'm downloading this game, and he was just explaining his process, and they kind of prefer that. Where I see computers as workstations. I do work on my computer. I don't have games on my computer. I don't have games on my phone. I see my phone as a tool. I still use my phone as a tool. I use it for the apps. I use it for my alarm clock, to surf the internet. I use it as a tool. I don't play Angry Birds. I don't have Bubble Bobble. I mean, not Bubble Bobble. Now I'm dating myself. Crazy. I don't have Candy Crush. And I don't play Grand Theft Auto Mobile. Like, if I'm going to play a video game, I go home, I turn on my PS5 or my Xbox, and it loads up on my TV screen, and I pull out the controller, and I like it that way. But I found it interesting, and that's something that I always assumed. But I wonder, this is what I wonder how entities like Best Buy, because we've already seen all their competitors go under, Circuit Cities, my hometown Sun TV, all that good stuff. They kind of went under, and it's like Best Buy, and then the big box stores like Target and Walmart. I wonder how these TV manufacturers are going to deal with this, because They have to know it's coming, right? 100% they know. And how they're going to solve that problem. If we're talking about problem solving, how they're going to approach that problem. Are they going to take the tact of, nah, we're going to keep on making TVs with better technology and bigger sizes, and maybe just rollable TVs we can just paint on the wall. We just kind of like up the technology, but we're still going to fight to have the TV be the central part of the home. That's what it boils down to. My generation, you buy a house. If the house has 5 rooms, you have 5 TVs. Well, I won't say my generation. I'll say me and my boys, our generation. That's what we do. We buy a new house. The first thing we do is hook up our electronics. First things we hook up is our TV, right? We go through the house and we're like, okay, the TV's going to be there. We're going to put the TV on that wall. We're going to do this and we're going to put this at an angle. We're going to have 2 TVs in this room. We're going to have TVs everywhere. That's like how we think. I don't know if this new generation of students and kids are going to think of it like that when they get to the point where they're buying apartments, buying homes. Like, the TVs aren't a focal point of their existence. They don't play video games on TVs. That's why I wanted a big TV, so I could play my video games on a big TV. I could watch my DVDs or my VHS movies on a big TV. So it's getting close to a movie experience. But these right here changed the game, in my opinion. They introduced to us, I can watch a movie on the subway. Right? One of the students was like, I was like, hey, where do you watch your shows and movies? They were like, my phone. I was like, you watch like 2-hour movies on your phone? They're like, yeah. I just sit there and just watch it. And it was like, I'm like, that's got to be hurting your eyes. And it was like, as soon as I said that, I sounded like a grandfather. I sounded like how my mom used to tell me to back up from the TV when I was playing my video games. Right? They thought it was going to make us all blind. So like, I don't know if that's affected our sight like that, but it didn't affect my sight that much. I still have close to 20/20, and I was routinely close to the TV. But these 4K million light bulb devices that we have now. But they don't mind watching things on small screens. So I just think that doesn't bode well for the movie industry, at least movie theater industry. I don't think that bodes well for... I take that back. When I asked them, hey, do y'all still go to the movies? All of them said yes. And they got excited about it. Like, yeah, we still like going to the movies and blah, blah, blah. But TV, Samsung, all the TV manufacturers, Sony, what are they going to do? Or are they going to like start making TV smaller? You know, maybe they start putting projector kind of technology in phones. I've seen that. You know, I just wonder how these companies, I would love to sit in and on a meeting about that. I would love to be a part of a group that helps to solve that problem if it is a problem. I think that's interesting. But the fact that they're totally indifferent, like on having a TV or not. They're like, yeah, I can have a TV, but I don't really need a TV. I thought that was very interesting. And I thought that it just showed me this generation gap as far as technology is concerned. And it's not a big gap. You know, I'm just like the generation up from them. And as far as technology is concerned, I think it's very important for us old heads to look back. I don't want to say look back, but look towards that generation right behind us and how they're doing things, and not to just poo-poo on everything they do. They're cool with the algorithm. We shouldn't poo-poo that. They're cool with not having TVs. We shouldn't poo-poo that. They're totally content watching one of these screens for hours and hours and hours and hours. And we talk about screen time. We do this. It's almost like, do we know what's really hurting them? You know, I'm sure there's studies, but are these studies conducted by 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds? At 21, 22, you're able to conduct some of these studies. I wonder how some of these studies will be if it was conducted by 22-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and not 50-year-olds. It sounds like the get off my lawn type of energy that I routinely hear when I hear older people talking about technology, when they're talking about AI. It just seems like it's this echo chamber of old people, and I'm putting myself in that group of older people saying how this is going to be so bad for the younger people. But when I talk to the younger people, they're indifferent. They don't see it as good as bad. And so I'm not worried. You know, things will work out. And technology is dope. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't wait to see what's next. I don't know if things are going to get smaller. I thought the phones would get smaller and smaller. Remember, back in the day, everything was big and bulky and heavy. And then it was like everything got better as it gets smaller, smaller. Computers got smaller, smaller, smaller. Phones got smaller and smaller, smaller. VCRs, DVDs got smaller and smaller and smaller and then disappeared, right? Everything was about getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And I thought phones were getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then it just got to the point where I have a tangent. This is a tangent, no doubt. Tangent. I have an iPhone 13 mini. Now, it's getting to the point where I need a new iPhone. This is my first iPhone I had. I'm typically an Android dude, particularly a Google Pixel guy, and I'm definitely probably going back that direction. But I got this iPhone 13 mini because this was the last of the small phones. I like small phones. I like phones that I can access with my thumb. I can access the whole screen with my thumb. And I could just one hand everything. So now we're going back to it's bigger and bigger and bigger. So who knows how technology is going to kind of lead us, the directions is going to lead us. And one thing that's dope about being a professor is that I can just ask these students. I don't have to conduct studies and surveys. I can just ask them every class. I just ask them these questions, and the answers they give me help me to better prognosticate what's coming down the line and what to worry about and what not to worry about. And one thing that I'm not worried about after having these conversations with these students, technology is not going to ruin them. It's just going to change. It's going to change us as a whole. And just be ready for the change. That's all. I'm just being agile. Just thinking this time, this day and age is the day and age of being agile. The agility, the ability to adapt is going to be paramount, in my opinion. Just so if you have a student in your house, in your proximity, just talk to them. Don't just talk. Well, talk with them. Talk with them. Ask them questions. Don't just tell them things and tell them how it used to be and tell them how it's going to be. Nah, just ask them what they think about all this stuff. Where they think things are going. Do they even care? It's a lot of the stuff they don't even care about, but we might see it as they just aloof and they don't care. Nah, they care. They just care about different things. Just ask them the things they care about. I think it's very important. So that was kind of the tangents I went on today. And yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of cool things coming out of this class because it's just thinking. Like I'm having them think a lot. And also, another tangent. Another thing I'm going to try to approach in this block is, I lost my train of thought. That's what happens sometimes with these tangents. I try to, when the tangent happens, I try to write it down so I don't forget it. But I just forgot this one. But that's okay. Maybe I'll put it in the next episode. So again, thank you very much for tuning in and see y'all next time. Peace.